Hey guys, what's up? This is Frederik Steinmetz, and I decided to make a tutorial series about all the modifiers that you can find in Blender. And I thought I'd start with the most popular one, which is the Subdivision Surface Modifier. And as you can see, if I don't use the Subdivision Surface Modifier, I got a lot of jagged edges here, and it just doesn't look right. So, first of all, I thought, well, I don't need to make a tutorial about this one because I could just as easily write this sentence. Go to Object Mode, press Ctrl 2. Presto. Okay, now my model looks a lot better. Of course, this is boosting up the poly count a lot, and you might want to be careful with getting up these subdivision levels. But because it's going to increase your render time. But there's a lot more to the subsurf modifier actually, so I decided to record the video nonetheless. Okay, one thing with a complex model, if you do this, make sure you put the subsurf modifier below your armature, because that way your model will deform, and then it's going to be corrected by the subsurf modifier. Unless, of course, you don't have enough geometry or enough polys to make the armature work properly, then you might want to put one level before the armature and one level below. But I would not recommend that in general, because you don't have as much control with the weight painting if you use the subdivision surface above this model. Above the armature, I'm sorry. Okay, let's create a new file and let's see how far we can take this. I'm going to press Ctrl 4 because with a cube Ctrl 2 doesn't do much, and by doing so I automatically apply a subsurf modifier with 4 subdivisions in the view, and render it's going to be set to 2, which is always the case. Now this cube has been turned into a sphere, which a lot of the time is not what you want. So there's a couple of methods to make this cube-like again. For example, if I press Ctrl R, I get this pink line, and that's called a loop cut. And if I drag this down here, you can see it's again flattening out those edges, but just where the loop is. So, well, this produced a cylinder, which basically works, but of course you won't, if you want to create a cylinder, you probably won't use a cube, even though it's got the big advantage that you don't have any triangles, which is also important. And there is a different method. This is like the standard method in all of the 3D programs, but let's just render this, because if I render this, I can see how many faces we have. It's 240. And if I delete this edge loop and also this one, if I alt-click on the edge, then I get the edge loop selected, and with X and edge loop I just delete the loop, keeping my edges intact. If I render this now, you'll see it's only 192 faces, so we got rid of 48 faces. And so actually this method of loop cutting is actually increasing our face count quite a bit. So there is a different option. If you press N, you get this menu here, and if you increase the mean crease, you can see that it has sort of the same effect, but without increasing the face count. Actually, it decreased the face count. Isn't that something? That's 144 and 192. It decreased the face count. I didn't even know that. I just thought it would not increase it. So this option is actually really good if you want to keep your polys low, and actually it creates a perfect straight edge, which also is very important. Well, sometimes. And the only downside to the crease is, let's say I make this edge here, I make it a crease of 0.2 or something, and this edge gets a crease of 0.8. Then if I select these two edges, I get a mean crease of 0.506, of course. That's the mean. So if I have an entire loop with different crease strengths, I guess, then it's going to be hard to control that later on. So if you're using the mean crease, you might want to think about that beforehand, or of course it works great if you only have a few edges and it's no problem to select them singly or one by one and then increase or decrease their crease. Haha. Okay, yeah, that's the main thing about the Subdivision Surface Modifier. There's a couple of more buttons here. The simple does nothing more than what you get if you press W and say subdivide, except for it's a modifier, so it's non-destructive, which is always a good thing. So I actually do use that a lot. And the optimal display, I can show you what that does as well. I set this back to Catmull Clark, and you can see it's a cage with very many edges. If I set this to optimal display, on a very low poly model like this, it's gonna look weird, and I'm not sure if you want that. But once you have my model like the grasshopper, optimal display is a good idea. Okay, of course this way I can't. Okay, there we go. If I go into this mode and I uncheck optimal display, oh, it's still okay, but still, it's you get a little bit more of a feeling what you're dealing with if you do use the optimal display. Okay, I guess that's about it for the Subdivision Surface Modifier. And yeah, just click the next button to get to the next modifier tutorial. Thanks for watching. To the next.